Hello there, woven web enthusiasts. Today we have a story that you'll find interesting, as many of you, I suspect, have spent time in other countries or plan to in the future, in no small part, to meet women from those countries. For me, my interest in Colombia began the first time I saw the opening theme to Narcos with the Tuya song playing, showing the beautiful scenery of all kinds that Colombia has to offer. But there are dark sides to this. This is Latin America, and more specifically, Colombia, after all. Now, some would call this a story about passport bros, but I'm not a fan of that term. If you want to go to another country and meet women, do it. Unfortunately, some guys did just that, and they never came back. The Wall Street Journal writes, Americans looking for love are getting killed by gangs in Colombia. The U.S. Embassy warns tourists after 8 men died in Medellín in 2 months, often after meeting women on dating apps. Minnesota comedian Tajer Jong had fallen in love with the expat lifestyle in the vibrant Colombian city of Medellín. Stock trading by day, fine dining, and dance clubs by night. He was one of a rising number of Americans and foreign nationals who began flocking to the country after the COVID-19 pandemic, some on new digital nomad visas introduced to help spur a growing startup scene. But hours after prosecutors say he went out on a date on December 10th, he was calling family and friends back home to wire him $2,000, telling them he had been kidnapped and held for ransom. The next day, police found Zong's lifeless body with multiple stab wounds and bruises after being tossed off a 260-foot cliff along the side of a stream in a lush, wooded area of a city renowned for its eternal spring climate and rolling green hills. It's surreal that in a place so beautiful, my brother died, Jong's older brother, Jong said in a phone interview from Minneapolis. Jong is one of at least 8 Americans who died in Colombia's second-largest city in November and December amid dozens of cases involving male tourists who were held captive and robbed, often after meeting women on dating apps, Medellín officials said. The deaths, some after the victims were drugged, and a spike in attacks against foreigners led the U.S. Embassy in Colombia to issue an alert earlier this month, urging caution for U.S. citizens meeting people through online dating platforms. The warnings are a stain for Medellín officials who have spent decades cleaning up the city's image, from the 1990s murder capital under cocaine kingpin Pablo Escobar to tourist hotspot with a flourishing nightlife. Homicides are down 97% in 3 decades. But some criminals these days are targeting foreigners, many of whom flock to the city looking for drug-fueled parties and sex workers, and are reluctant to report crimes if they are victimized, U.S. and Medellín officials said. The attacks on foreigners come amid a robust rebound in tourism for Medellín, which residents, city authorities, and even longtime expats blame for gentrification and a higher cost of living. The number of apartments listed on rental apps like Airbnb has nearly doubled to 7,000 in the last 4 years, according to alltherooms.com. Rent has nearly tripled in the affluent El Poblado district, where Jong had stayed and where many of the crimes occurred, and which is popular with foreigners who the city has tried to attract in an effort to make Medellín over as a remote tech workers' paradise. We want more and more foreigners to come, but we want them to take part in tourism that adds value, Medellín Mayor Federico Gutierrez said after the U.S. warning, anyone who thinks they can come here for that sex and drugs tourism, we don't want any of that here. And to break in and editorialize a bit here, okay, Federico, but I believe these problems predate any passport bro influx. Just a thought. And back to the article. In some of the deaths, which the U.S. Embassy deemed suspicious, American men were found dead in their hotel rooms or rented apartments after outings with local women. In other attacks, thugs robbed and killed them on the street while they were on dates, according to police reports. Others are believed to have died from mixing heavy drinking and the kind of mind-altering drugs gangs slip into drinks to incapacitate a victim before a robbery. Social media sites and internet travel message boards are rife with commentators encouraging middle-aged American men to indulge in the libertine dating scene in Colombia's major cities where prostitution is legal. Many men tout their prolific dating through hookup apps like Tinder and Bumble. Tinder has so many beautiful women in Colombia, reads one post on TikTok, where a woman kisses a man, a Savannah reads, passport bro date, the colloquial term to describe foreigners dating local women. But there are also scores of social media accounts warning foreigners of the risks of falling victim on dates in which crime gangs use drugs to sedate unsuspecting marks to rob them. It's become a huge problem in the last few years, said Jeremy Kreisler, a California native who lived in Medellín and runs a service helping young digital nomads embark on the expat life. On his X profile, Kreisler in October offered a checklist of Dating 101 tips, urging followers to choose the meeting site, closely watch their drink, and avoid getting drunk. He also advised against mingling without speaking Spanish. Even seasoned travelers can unwittingly become prey, Kreisler said, recalling how a friend was drugged at a bar and found most of his belongings gone when he regained consciousness at his apartment 2 days later. Kreisler said that he has seen a noticeable jump in the amount of street prostitution, a problem that the city government says has become acute in tourist-heavy neighborhoods. I was blown away, he said. The question is, what is Colombia going to do about it? The Attorney General's office said it arrested about 50 people in 2023 for allegedly working with criminal groups that targeted foreigners in Medellín. In September, prosecutors arrested 14 members of one alleged crime syndicate that included underage girls used to create fake social media profiles to draw victims, all of whom were men between the ages of 27 and 60. They were accused of robbing money and jewelry worth nearly $100,000 over a 10-month period. William Vivas, Medellín's top official who fields and investigates citizens' complaints, said a fraction of the 1.3 million visitors to the city last year came for sex tourism. But those who do are particularly vulnerable to scams by gangs that subdue them using scopolamine, a powder or liquid that is sneaked into food or beverages to leave people in a drowsy, zombie-like state. Vivas said his office has been alerting Medellín authorities of the rise in cases over the last 2 years. Unfortunately, the economic boom that we see through tourism also creates spaces for criminal structures to make money for themselves, Vivas said. There are men and women who are hunting to seduce you and mug you. My advice would be, don't let yourself get seduced. The city's Tourism Advocacy Board noted that thefts against foreigners had tripled during the third quarter of 2023 compared with the previous year. Murders in general, meanwhile, have fallen precipitously, with Medellín logging a homicide rate in 2023 of about 13 per 100,000, down from 395 per 100,000 in 1991, according to city data. And to break in here, a little bit of quick research shows that there are about 20 cities in the U.S. with homicide rates higher than 13 per 100,000. Now, we're assuming that we're comparing apples to apples and that all the data is being reported accurately. Back to the story. Jong's family said he had never spoke about using dating apps, but had told some of his brothers about a girl he'd met in Medellín in July on one of his several trips to Colombia. He would tell me, "You have to come down with me," Jong said, recalling their last Thanksgiving when his brother showed off photos of new friends in Medellín. But Jong didn't tell his family who he was meeting on December 10th. On Thursday, prosecutors arrested 2 men, a woman, and a 17-year-old adolescent in Jong's kidnapping and murder. Colombian investigators say the 50-year-old set out to an apartment to meet a woman he had connected with on social media. He was then tied up, beaten, and forced to call loved ones to send money to a PayPal account. A total of over $3,100 was quickly sent to the account, prosecutors said, but Jong was killed anyway. And Woven Web listeners, what are your thoughts here? Based on the hard numbers, it looks like a guy could lose his life by homicide in about 20 U.S. cities faster than he can in Medellín, Colombia. But on an individual level, these are sad stories. 8 guys have lost their life. A lot of others have been drugged and robbed. But I maintain that if you will keep some situational awareness about you and don't get caught up in this woman, stay aware. Yes, a wolf in sheep's clothing could get you. It's possible. But if you'll have a little awareness, you should be fine. But what are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments, and I appreciate you listening.